Since I seem to always be making more work for myself, I thought today we would take a look at all of the Legacy Core Class Dinobots all at once, because, you know, the whole point is to have all of them and do the combination thing, so that's what we're doing today. I am going to be looking at these in the order in which I received them, so that's why we're going to go left to right from Sludge all the way down to Snarl, because first down to last, that kind of thing. Now, I'm going to attempt to go quickly because these are core class figures, and because I don't want this video to be another one that I've recorded that's like an hour long, but we'll see how it goes. Now, right off the bat, they are the Dinobots. They look good together. They are pretty cohesive in terms of their coloration. The thing that kind of bums me out, though, and this is a thing I didn't quite catch on myself until I watched Vault Matrix's video on it, how Snarl is yellow, whereas everyone else, it's gold paint. It's disappointing. Not saying that everything that's yellow on Snarl should have been gold, but like, maybe just paint the plates or something. Just give them a little bit of actual gold paint to match everyone else, you know? That does kind of bum me out. But other than that, they do look really good together. They are the Dinobots. They're designed to look good together. And so, yeah, let's just move all of the other folks out of the way. Make sure to do it so that I don't forget what order they're in. And then start where it all began with Sludge. And now, yes, this is a very... I mean, they're all kind of messy and compromised in different ways. They get progressively better after, like, once you get to Scarr and Swoop and Snarl. But the thing is, like, they're core class figures. They're designed to be smaller and simpler. Plus, they, you know, it's not just Dino to Robot. It's Dino to Robot to Combiner piece. So I feel like, given the constraints, given the size, given the budgets, and the fact that it has to be a triple changer, I feel like the compromises are fine. It is a little bit of a shame that Sludge is like got this really weird kind of, like, he's got a gap in the center, he's got this undeniable dump truck in the back, and the tail sits like really high and is really stumpy. The back legs are enormous, the front legs are tiny, the head is tiny. He's just a brick in this mode, unless you want to de-transform him. You can have him kind of waggle his head up and down a bit. But core class figure, triple changer, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, he looks good. He hits the right notes for Sludge. I think the tail could have used a little bit of this silver, because, you know, the tail, I think, should be silver, but it's okay. He does have the gold on the head, which is the most important thing, silver on the back, which is the second most important thing. So, it's fine. I would say give it a pass, but it's not like I'm the arbiter of all this stuff, so yeah. He's a little misshapen, a little silly, but the colors are good. The detailing for what's there is nice. And again, considering the constraints of the design, it is understandable. Slug, in an odd turn of events, is not... I don't hate this. I absolutely despise Power of the Prime Slug. Still kind of think that figure sucks. But the core class Legacy figure is actually pretty decent. He is less like a potato with horns and more like half a potato with horns. It's like weirdly skinny at the bottom, but like super chunky on top. But again, the shape is there, the coloring is there. You've got, of course, the most important thing, the gold on the face with those blue eyes. And then that's pretty much it. Like, you got the gold for the tail, which is nice, but yeah, these could have been colored in. But I think with Sludge, the stuff that they did get paint on, I think is probably the more important recognizable elements to have painted. Now, unlike Sludge, Slug actually does have a little bit of articulation. You can rotate the back legs, almost 360 degrees. They pop into that. You can rotate the forelegs around, and then they can also go in and out for the various transformations. And the head, the mouth is connected to the bottom. It's not actually connected to the head, but you can move the head slightly, and it still kind of works, even with the mouth not being connected. So you can get a little expressive with Slug. And he looks good. I think, a little bit of paint on the horns wouldn't go amiss. A little bit of paint in a few other places would be nice, but again, core class figure, it's fine. And who knows, maybe I'll take a paintbrush to these things myself in the future. Now, Grimlock, oh boy. Grimlock is, as far as I'm concerned, there may be people who believe otherwise, and that's fine, but as far as I'm concerned, Grimlock is the most compromised of the entire team in Dino mode, at least. Not just because he's got a tail that's somehow worse than Power of the Prime's Grimlock's tail, but he also has these really unsightly knobs right around his neck. It's just, he's not cute in Dino mode. Again, a lot of the important stuff is painted in here. They actually painted the T-Rex arms in silver, the toes are in gold, what becomes the robot chest is in gold, the dino neck is in gold, the eyes are blue. They could have also gone with red. I prefer blue, but there were a couple of options they could have gone with. So I think, at least paint-wise, of the ones we've looked at so far, Grimlock probably does the best job of painting the necessary bits. But again, design-wise, definitely the most compromised. Also, they painted this piece silver, and I really don't understand why. Like, yeah, it's Grimlock's tail, but it's not the most important thing to have painted, and it's really, all that silver gets lost in both the robot mode and combined modes because of how it has to be oriented, so seems like a waste, but oh well. Now, Scarr. Scarr is one of the better options here, and why is the head not flipping in? I think it popped out when I was transforming him. I don't know. For some reason, the head's not staying. Oh, wait. Forgot to talk about articulation on Grimlock. The head can look up. The hips are on a ball joint, and you can rotate the toes. So, simple articulation, not as good as Slug, but it's okay. Yeah, Scarr, ignoring the fact that this doesn't tab in, I don't have any reference for Scarr in terms of what should and shouldn't be painted, because as far as I understand, we've never gotten a toy of Scarr before, so that's cool. I'm all for adding another one. I personally would have preferred Slash, but she's about as much a constant member of the team as Scarr is, so give this boy his chance too. What is here, though, is nice. The you get not a whole lot of visible paint from the side, but the head has a lot of nice gold on it. I like the the Autobot symbol just on his nose. For some reason, that's very cute. And the Ankylosaurus plates, the entire back, has silver paint going along it, along with these gold accents, which is cool. No silver along the sides, which would have been nice. And I don't know how paint budgets work. I feel like since this is all one piece, they could have done an unbroken coat of silver all around the side, but oh well. But regardless of that, it's a pretty good looking Ankylosaurus. The only thing that really bums me out is the tail. And it's not because it's a parts forming piece. I think it's fine. I don't mind the fact, and I actually think it's pretty clever use of the part to have this entire thing become the entire tail, not just the club piece at the end, but the base of the tail. The thing that kind of bums me out is I kind of wish that they didn't paint the base of the tail at all. If they just left that gray, I feel like it would have made more sense to have this taper down into the tail and retain that kind of silvery grayish tone. It would have been like this, but like a grayish tone, and then have it just end in like the club portion of the tail being painted. But that's just me. Now, Scarr also has a little bit of articulation. You can rotate the back legs and you can rotate the forelegs. And if you want to, you can angle the head up and down, but it doesn't really look great. So that is Scarr. And now Swoop. And much like Power of the Primes, Swoop is great. The Dino mode is very simple. There's very obvious robot tucked up under there. And he does, kind of a standard Swoop transformation. Which I gotta say, it is interesting how they both retain and change the transformation, like the classic Dinobot transformation, on all of the main 5. Not counting Scarr, because Scarr, as I said, I don't think he ever had an official toy, or if he did, it wasn't definitely wasn't in G1. But I don't know, I think it's cool how the way that they transform is kind of similar in many ways to their original counterparts, with the exception of Sludge. But it's neat. Now, Swoop is, got his Granodon mode. He is neat. He is painted well. It's, it's Swoop, so I feel like the color separation and paint does what it needs to do. The obvious robot feet along the back have kind of always been there. And I like that the wings, they didn't need to paint the wings, so it's fine that they didn't, but I like that the wings are a different color plastic than everything else. Though as I'm looking at this, I'm realizing the lower legs are actually white plastic. They seem to be the same color as the wings, so they actually painted these legs entirely gray along with these red bits, so that's some dedication. And yeah, I don't know, Swoop is cool. Articulation is very, very simple. You can kind of move the head down if you want, and you can angle the robot head to match. So you can kind of play with it a little bit, but if you get too far, then it starts to look a bit off. And you can flap the wings up and down very slightly, but these bang into the legs. And you can do the tips of the wings if you want to do that. So simple articulation on Swoop, but it's alright. And then Snarl. Snarl is a brick. He has no articulation at all when you have him transformed properly. The forelegs are molded in, so those are not going to move at all. The head's not going to move at all. The back legs don't move because they're pegged in. If you want, you can unpeg them and then move them, but what does that accomplish, really? Since you can't move the forelegs at all, it kind of seems pointless. I mean, he's got fists sticking out of the back. Well, I guess you can waggle at the knee there if you really want. But yeah, he's got fists sticking out of the back. He's got this cute little potato body and face. He does look good. The color breakup in Dino mode is also a lot better because these sections, which are the legs, are in this yellow plastic and have been painted silver, so they basically just didn't paint the legs and the plates, which really goes a long way to set some of these colors apart, some of these details apart. And you also have the back plate, which is yellow painted in red. But yeah, I don't know, he's cute. I like him. And also, he comes with a weapon that can be stored in Dino mode. Now, the other guys do come with weapons, but their weapons are more integrated into the Dino mode. Actually, weirdly, Sludge is the only one that doesn't come with a weapon. Don't know why that is. But yeah, Snarl's weapon is just a sword that pegs into the bottom here, and it's fine, but that sword is kind of more of a pain in the butt than it's worth. And it is a little bit of a disappointment. The sword doesn't really integrate into the Dino mode. Yeah, with Swoop, he's got wing-mounted guns, but it still kind of works. But yeah. And again, nice detailing. And as with all of these, I said this with Sludge and a little bit with Slug at the start, but with all of them, they are compromised. But again, they're core class figures that are designed to transform into 3 different things. So I think that's understandable that they would be just a touch compromised in terms of what they can do. Now, actually, let's do this in guess, batches to do our size comparisons, because they're core class figures of varying sizes, but there are 6 of them, so we'll just do 3 at a time. So bring in usual size comparison figures. There we go. And yeah, so there are Sludge, Slug, and Grimlock with the standard size comparisons, and again, they're core class, so obviously they are a little bit on the small side, which is kind of the whole point. And then bring in Scarr and Snarl, and Swoop can just kind of hang out on top there. And there is how all of that stacks up. Now let's get you all out of... Whoop. You stay. Get all of these out of the way. And I think we could probably fit everyone else in the frame for this one. So bring back Grimlock, Slug, Sludge, and yeah, so there we go. There is the whole team with the duck tank. Okay, time to transform all of these Dinobots. Fortunately, because they are core class, they are pretty easy to transform. So for Sludge, I want to disconnect the neck, just tabs in right in there, and flip that around. Not all the way, but you want to bring it down. Now we can kind of... This part's, it's not tricky, but it's more involved than you'd think for a core class. You basically want to pull this section, like rotate the back up around here and rotate the front of the back up along here. So you kind of want to bring them up together, like so, because the robot mode arms tuck inside the tail. So do that, and you can rotate tail down like so, split what will become the legs, and there is the bottom half of the figure all done. Now we can split the back section apart and rotate these out. And this is pretty cool. I like how the forelegs rotate back around and actually form his back. That's, I don't know, I think that's cool. And then rotate at the waist, and then we can bring that down the rest of the way. And there we've got Sludge in his very compromised robot mode. But again, that's, you know, it makes sense. There is a reason for it. So now it is Slug's turn, and so we want to unplug the tail. This is something that's strange. I noticed, like, the bit in here inside the tail, this plugged in a lot more solidly when I first got the figure, and then it just kind of stopped plugging in solidly. I mean, now I guess it's okay. Maybe it just wasn't pushed in far enough, but yeah, something to be considered of. Anyway, you pop off the tail. I'm going to rotate these back just to get them out of the way so that we can pop up the legs here. Then rotate these around, split the legs, and these, I don't think, like, they don't really have a specific place to lock in. If you want, you can tilt them back to give him heels, kind of, but I typically just have them up like this because they don't really get in the way if you have them up, and it cleans it up a little bit. I don't know. The forelegs you want to bring out, rotate around, and then bring back in. So that way they're basically flipped around. So like this is Dino mode, this is robot mode, because he's got fists on the other sides of those forelegs. Now this, you can leave these bits down, but I prefer to split them apart and flare them out because it gives him more of his like classic little back wings look. And lastly, you take the lower jaw and fold that all the way down, and that completes the chest. And then you can take the tail, and there's this little peg there, peg into his fist, and now he has a little gun. and that is Slug's Transformation. Very simple. I mean, they're all very simple, but I think Slug's Transformation is actually pretty effective. Now, Grimlock. Grimlock is actually very Grimlock, even at this scale. So you want to unplug the tail, big surprise. Put that off to the side for now. And then take the entire butt section and unplug that and swing it down, and then split it. And now we have legs. For the T-Rex legs, you don't really do anything. You just rotate the claws to the side. And as you can see, this just twisted itself out. That is just a thing this figure does. I don't really know. I think there's just some kind of mismolding in there that pushes it out a little bit, but it's fine. While we're here, we can plug this gun into his hand, much like Slug's gun. Then going to split the T-Rex chest, like so. Flip this down, and unlike regular Grimlock stuff, like you can rotate these around if you want to do the more standard Grimlock back, but that leaves the wings sitting very low, and they do more get in the way of the arms. So personally, I do the stock thing where I keep them up like that and just fold them down like that, and it looks a little weird having Grimlock with his little back wings upside down like that, but it's okay. And then the combiner peg, you can just fold back around into that little cavity there, and that cleans up his back a little bit. And there we have Grimlock. And yeah, we will talk about Grimlock, but there's that. Swoop is very Swoop. You want to unplug the guns from the wings. They plug in pretty securely, but unplug those. Come on. Come on. Let go. There we go. Okay, unplug the guns. Now unplug the feet from the back. They just plug in right in there. So unplug those. We can fold in the wings and they will tab in together here. So just tab those in and then bring these out. And move out the arms. They tab in a couple of places. There's a tab here that tabs into the hip, and there's a tab here that tabs into the bicep, the inside of the bicep. Untab that, and untab the legs, and then bring down the Dino mode head, and then rotate down the robot mode head. And yes, Swoop is awesome. There's so little compromise here. We'll talk about that more in detail in a bit, but yeah, then we can take the guns and they will peg into the fists, as you would expect. So now there we have Swoop. And also, again, like Power of the Primes, Swoop is just great. And I realized I did these in the wrong order. I should have done Scarr before Swoop, but oh well. So for Scarr, I want to unplug the tail, rotate the back legs around, and these will tab in here to just kind of securely tuck away. Then we can, as with a couple of other guys we've looked at, unplug the legs that form the back and swing them around, split them, take the forelegs and bring them up. They just kind of sit right here, but you can see they're kind of molded to fit in there. Now we can take the head and flip that around, take it back and split it, similar to Sludge, and hinge those out and around, rotate the waist, and there we have Scarr. If you want to, you can rotate this down so that you can rotate the dino head down a little bit more. It still gives you access to the waist. You just can't go a full 360, but I feel like that does look a little better because it gets the dino head a little bit more out of the way. But there's Scarr, and again, peg on gun, peg goes in hand, Scarr now holds gun. And finally, you can look at Snarl, and Snarl is, once again, really actually pretty cool. So you want to untab Sword, which plugs in maybe a little too well. Like, it's hard to plug in, and it's also hard to unplug. I don't Just don't like this sword. It just kind of gets in the way. Okay, I actually need to use a spudger for this. That's ridiculous. Come on. Let go. Let go. There we go. Because I don't want to flex this too much. I don't want to, like, you know, break the plastic, but this tabs in just a little too snugly. Now, let's do the legs first. So, as we've seen, want to pop these out. They actually tab into this plate here and swing these up, and the knees kind of lock in a little bit when you get to a certain point. Like here, it feels like they don't go anymore. You actually have to force them past that point, which does, you know, it's not going to break anything, but it's a little bit uncomfortably snug, and unfolding them is kind of the same deal. But anyway, you want to unfold them about like that, roughly 90 degrees. Split the legs, and that will allow you to take the halves of the dino head and fold them up into the legs. And then with those folded in, you can then straighten the legs out the rest of the way. And there we have the lower body. For the upper body, you want to unpeg the arms from these tabs on the side of the torso, and then just straighten them out. Really simple. And you don't have to do anything back here. All you got to do is take the tail and split it in half, and rotate the tail halves around over the shoulders, and then rotate the head around. And there we have Snarl, and Snarl can hold the sword. So yeah, there are all of our core class Dinobots, and they are very cool. I actually like these a lot as, most of them I should say, I like a lot as individual figures. Some of them are a little bit maybe too compromised for my liking in terms of just like individual figure coolness, let's say. But outside of that, they're actually all pretty darn cool. So yeah, there they are all together. And interestingly, Swoop is actually the tallest. Well, Swoop and Slug, but a lot of Slug's height comes from his little hood. So yeah, it's weird that Grimlock is not the biggest in this case. He's actually one of the smaller ones. But they are kind of uniform height, mostly. Like, there is some variation between them, but yeah. And again, they look really good together. Swoop is rocking the blue chest, which, yeah, it stands out, but like, that's Swoop. It's always been like that. And I do think it's cool, too, how Snarl, he just kind of fits in. He matches the team pretty well. Also, if you want to talk about characters standing out, yeah, Swoop's got a blue chest, but he does have the red for his head, so it's like, yeah, the chest stands out a little bit, but like, look at the rest of the team. You've got red chest, some red in the chest, red chest, and then Grimlock has a gold chest. He doesn't have a red chest, so he stands out too. Yes, he's the leader, but like, if we want to complain about cohesive color schemes for everybody, Grimlock breaks it too. Just saying. But yeah, this is a fun set of little desk toys that I just really like. Now, Sludge is... I would argue that Sludge is yes, Sludge is the most compromised of all of them in robot mode, but again, considering what he has to do, that doesn't really bother me. And also, I feel like the way they handled this, even though it's a little bit weird and awkward, is really interesting and kind of clever. Like his lower half in particular, because his thigh swivels happen at these like saddlebags. So while it looks like his legs are connected here, they're not. But like, it's a really interesting and kind of clever visual trick. Like, if you flail the legs out, they do, break up. But if he's just standing, you can do a little bit of rotation. You can kind of bring the legs forward and, do a faux knee bend. Like, that doesn't really look too bad, considering all the constraints that they had to put up with to like make this thing work as a triple changer. I feel like the way that they designed this section is really smart for what they needed. yes, it definitely would have been nice if Sludge had, you know, actual legs and not these weird saddlebags that are like armatures holding his legs together, but I do think that this is clever for what it is. Really, the thing that bugs me more about Sludge is his arms sit so far away from his torso. And I know that's out of necessity, both because, like, if the arms were closer to the torso, you couldn't put them down because of all this going on here, and also because, you know, core class figure, lower budget. But that looks weirder to me than this. Now, in terms of, actually, let's look at that head, because we don't want to forget to look at the head. So, Sludge's head is Sludge's head. Looks like the little Dinobot guy with the little Mickey Mouse ears. It is really difficult to tell if those eyes are painted. I think they are. Yeah, there we go. Tiny, tiny, so tiny little spots are painted in a metallic blue, so that's cool. And of course, the color separation is nice with the black and the silver. And I think this head is actually probably cast in gray plastic, so it's entirely painted, which is cool. And then, as you saw, the head is on a swivel, so he can look around, and that is something I appreciate, that all of the Dinobots can move their heads. The shoulders are on ball joints, so you can go around and out. Nothing else at the arm, no wrist, no elbows, no bicep, but, you know, simple core class figure, that's fine. You get a waist rotation, and it can bang into the dino head on the back, but if you move it up and out of the way, you can go further. And also, I guess, if you wanted to, you could use the transformation joint as a pseudo, like, butterfly thing. It's not great, but you can do it. And as we saw with the legs, there's actually a fair bit of articulation. Like, you can go out, you can go forward and back, you can swivel next to the thigh, and then you can bend what is basically the knee. It's on a ball joint, but it doesn't really afford much in the way of waggling. It's more just for rotation. So yeah, despite all of his very obvious flaws and shortcomings, this guy's actually pretty neat and, you know, does what he set out to do pretty intelligently. So I like Sludge. Yes, I will acknowledge he is not the best of the lot, but I like him. Slug also is surprisingly decent. Like, the sculpt and everything looks good. The you know, paintwork here with the red chest, red waist, red head all look good. He does have the tiniest looking head among everyone else. Like, if you look at them all together, his head just looks a little too small. Some of that, I think, is because it's sitting inside of this big dino face. And, like, if you look at how this folds up, there is enough room that they probably could have made the head larger, but they didn't. I don't know. The head looks a little too small. But the sculpt is nice. Let's do this instead. There we go. The sculpt is nice, especially at the size. And it's, you know, red head slug with nice metallic blue eyes. It looks good. As for the articulation, the head is on a ball joint, which is cool. But it doesn't really afford much in the way of, like, you get a little up and down, a little side to side, but it's mostly for rotation. And it can rotate all the way around, though it does scrape against things a little bit. The arms are on these rotational joints, and then also these ratcheted in and out joints. Nothing at the elbow or wrist, which it's fine. He has a gun that he can point and look where he's shooting, so that's, I think, enough. You also get a waist rotation. Waist rotations are almost all of these Dinobots have waist rotations. That's pretty cool. Got ball jointed hips, which are a little loose for me, but he's a core class figure. I think it's fine. Like, he's not going to fall under his own weight or anything like that, so it's fine. But you can go forward and back to pretty much 90. You can go out. Let's see if we get this out of the way. You can go out to 90. There's a ball jointed knee, so you can get a really deep knee bend. And the ball joint kind of stands in for a thigh swivel. So yeah, you know, simple articulation, but it gets the job done and is actually pretty decent for what it is. And it's a big breath of fresh air after Power of the Prime Slug, because I still do not like Power of the Prime Slug. Whoop. See, there we go. Thing fell out of the gun. I don't know, maybe the peg got compacted a little bit because of being left in combine mode. I don't know. It's annoying, but it's not the worst problem. Now, Grimlock. He's not as compromised as Sludge, but I think he's the most disappointingly compromised for me, because like his arms are so limited, and the back wings being upside down is really kind of... It shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but it really does. Also, I don't like the tail gun. I think it's pointless and silly. I feel like it would have been better if he had the sword. I know Grimlock doesn't usually have the sword, like, actually. Like, we always associate it with him, but he doesn't really have it in, like, a lot of toys and stuff. But I still would have preferred that. But at the same time, then it wouldn't have filled out the tail, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, molding's okay, proportions are decent. He's got the typical Grimlock, big clompy boots, but they're a little bit weird in that the knees are so high up, and also, like, yeah, a lot of him is leg. Like, a lot of him is leg. Now, the head is, it is very Grimlock, but tiny. Maybe a little bit pushed out to the side, more than I'm used to, but it still reads as Grimlock. And, you know, the sculpting is there, the painting is there. I love the metallic blue for the eyes. And it looks good, as does the detail in the chest. You got the head rotation, as you saw. Arms are on ball joints, so you can swing around, and if you wanted to, you can kind of get the little back wings out of the way. Arms can go out. You can also use a transformation joint as a kind of butterfly, but doesn't really accomplish much. You get wrist rotation because of the transformation, so that's something. Though with this arm, it does have a tendency to unseat itself pretty easily. It seems to be doing okay now, though. That's good. You also get a waist rotation. And this, I don't think the waist rotation factors into any of the transformational stuff, so this is just because they could. That's pretty cool. Also, as you saw, the back wings are on these ball joints, so you can rotate them, kind of swing them around to different orientations. Anyway, the legs can go forward past 90, can go back. Well, with the dino head and stuff in the way, they kind of get hampered, but they can go back there if nothing's in the way. Can go out to just about 90. There is a very deep knee bend due to the transformation. Well, not very deep. It's past 90, but since the thigh sits so far in the leg, it looks like it's going a lot further than it is. And then because the knee is a ball joint, that kind of works as a thigh swivel, but it doesn't really because of all of the molding in here and the shape of the thigh. So that's as far as that's going to rotate. And if you bend the knee, it's about the same. So his thigh rotation is kind of a myth. A little bit of a lie. But that's okay. And now Scarr. Scarr was really fun when I first got him. Like, I was really impressed. He looks good. I like how beefy he is. He's actually beefier than Grimlock, which is pretty funny. But then again, I guess in a way it kind of makes sense because he's like the armored one, the most armored one of the group. And yeah, I don't know. He's cool. He is, you know, core class triple changer compromise like everyone else, but he does look good. And he can accomplish quite a bit, actually. But before we get to that, there is the head. And I don't know how this stacks in terms of, or how this compares to like how Scarr's head is supposed to look. I have no idea. But I think it works. It matches the same Dinobot head aesthetic that we have with Snarl and Sludge, where it's, you know, kind of a silver face with the metallic blue eyes and like a black helmet. And I think this helmet kind of works. The shape of the helmet evokes a little bit of maybe the Dino Mode head, just a little bit. And that little spike at the top makes me think of the kind of club tail and this little plate spiny bits along the armored back, so I think it works. Now for the articulation, he is pretty much on par with, like we saw with everyone else. The head is on a swivel, so you can rotate around. The arms are on ball joints, or the shoulders are on ball joints, so you can use this to get kind of a butterfly motion. You can go out, and then you can rotate around. You can use this joint on the inside to work as a butterfly as well. He also has a waist swivel, though the waist swivel that Scarr has is actually for the transformation, but got a waist swivel. The hips can go forward a little bit past 90 and can go back pretty much to 90. You've got to bring them out a little bit to get around the combiner peg if the combiner peg is down. If it's not down, then you don't have to bring them out to go back to 90, so that's something to consider, I guess. And then they can go out, that out of the way, they can go out to 90. You can use that ball joint as a little bit of a thigh swivel, but you can also use the ball joint in the knee as a little bit of a thigh swivel. So again, like Grimlock, his thigh swiveling, at least when standing, is hampered. You can bend the knees in a lot because of the transformation, so there's that. And when the knee is bent, you can rotate much more freely than when it's straightened out like that. So yeah. Scarr's articulation is pretty decent, and he is fun to mess with. Swoop, though, once again, is probably my favorite. He's the most kind of uncompromised of everyone, in my mind at least. I like how the wings reshaped for the robot mode, and they don't crash into anything. Like, you can fold them all the way back if you want, and they don't really get in the way. But if you wanted to, you could untab them and straighten them out so that he has his full wingspan. I don't know. Swoop is fun to mess with. He is very gray. In robot mode, he is very gray. All of the color is really concentrated around his torso and head. You do get a little bit of red in the legs, but it's the side of the legs, so you don't really see it that well. But at the same time, I can't really say he's not painted, because as I said, the entire lower leg section is painted gray. And they did a really good job of color matching, because that looks practically indistinguishable from that. So I appreciate that as well. The head is very Swoop. It's got that telltale red helmet with the big crest sticking off the back, and the somewhat friendly but gaunt face. Silver face, metallic blue eyes, you know the drill. Now for the articulation, the head is on a ball joint. It's the only other ball joint in the group, like Slug, but Swoop's ball joint is a lot more expressive, as you can see. It can waggle left and right to give him a little bit more personality. You can look way up and look down a little bit, but really that's not so much down as straight. And because it's a ball joint, you can rotate left and right. The shoulders are on ball joints, so you can go out. Okay, that popped the ball joint, so you can go out to about here. Can rotate around. Very tight ball joint for some reason. You can kind of wiggle this a little bit to work as a pseudo bicep swivel, but not really. You've got ball joint at the elbow, so the elbow can bend a little bit past 90, and then the ball joint works as a bicep swivel. Nothing at the wrists, but that's okay. And as you saw, the wings can hinge in and out to get out of the way. Let's get this out of the way. And he does actually have a waist swivel. And despite the bird face being, or not bird, well, I guess technically bird face down around his pelvis, he can turn it a decent amount before it gets blocked. But if you want to turn it more, you can raise it up a little bit and get a little bit more dynamic with it. So yeah, he has waist articulation. The hips are on ball joints and can move forward to just about 90 and back to just about 90. If we get the wings out of the way, they can go back further than that. unlike everyone else, he does not have, well, unlike everyone else except Sludge, he doesn't have ball-jointed knees. He actually has real thigh swivels. And that's also, like, Sludge technically doesn't have real thigh swivels, so that's cool. Swoop's got just a straight-up thigh swivel. It's awesome. And then he also has hinged knees that, due to the transformation, can bend pretty much 180 degrees. So yeah, Swoop is the most standalone of the set in that the robot mode looks great. The Pteranodon mode, not the best, but it gets the job done, and transformation's pretty fun. In addition to that, he is the most well-articulated of the group, so I mean, I guess it makes sense that the more lithe one would be the most bendy one, but yeah. He is probably my favorite, just like Power of the Primes. And then we come to Snarl, and Snarl is not as good as Swoop, but I would put him in the same league as Scarr at least. Snarl is a very good standalone figure as well. He looks nice. There's a lot of good color breakup considering the size and everything. He's he accomplishes a lot at the scale, and he looks pretty good. It is a little weird, though, that he has this very obvious spot for an Autobot logo right there, and there's no Autobot logo. Not that that can't be remedied, with a repro label or something, but it's just kind of weird that they molded it in but didn't actually give him the logo. Anyway, Snarl's head is Snarl's head. Looks like Snarl. Like a dome with horns. He looks very stoic, I guess, or perhaps vacant. But again, he's got that nice, like, black helmet, silver face, blue eyes, good sculpt. And as you can see, it is on a swivel, so it can rotate left and right. The arms are on ball joints, as most of them are, so they can rotate not around the... And you can kind of, if you bring the arm out, you can get around the tail, but you're not going to do a full 360 with the arm straight out. You can go out to just about 90. You can use that ball joint as a very, very slight butterfly / bicep swivel, and then you can bend the elbow past 90 due to the transformation. You can also use this transformation joint as a bit of a butterfly if you want to do that. It makes more sense for Snarl because of the sword, but still, I don't know. Like, it works, but it could be better. He also has a waist swivel, so yeah. And this is actually pretty clever. Even with this plate on the back, there's enough space for the waist to go through there, so it doesn't actually impede the waist swivel. I really like that. I say that as it gets stuck. The hips are on ball joints, so you can swing forward and back to pretty much 90, can go out to just about 90. You get kind of a thigh swivel because of the ball joint, that's about it. And unfortunately, he does not have ball-jointed knees because of how all of this works. I think they just didn't have the room for it with how you had to swing out the Stegosaurus head. So instead, you get knee bend, and it bends to about there, which is well past 90. And this is where it kind of naturally stops because of that catch I was talking about. You can push it past, but the problem is that Stegosaurus head is in there, so if you want to do like a real big knee bend, you're going to have to move the head out, and that doesn't really give you a lot of room. You could do that if you wanted to do like a Stegosaurus head's knee spike, I guess. I don't know. Point is, this stopping point makes sense, and it's still a pretty deep knee. So yeah, Snarl is... I'd say I'd probably rank him number 2 or number 3, either right behind Swoop or right behind Swoop and Scarr, as like a standalone. But he's cool. It's just the dinky little sword I'm not super into, but whatever. So there we have our plethora of Dinobots, and they look really good together, as I said. Now, because they're all mostly the same size, I'm not going to do size comparisons with everybody. I think I'm going to get the more, I try and get a selection of heights and just leave it at that. So we'll go with these three because we've got deceptively tall because of the hood, Grimlock, and then actually taller in the lineup here. All right, now it is time for our next bit of size comparison. So here is Artfire and Rotor Storm and Oviprime, Samus, and Burnout. And once again, they're core class figures, so they're small. That is their whole point. They are small. They are small, and they are cute, and they are also kind of cool and surprisingly effective at what they do, despite being so small. And I really appreciate that. Also, I'm realizing with everything I've been putting on Rotor Storm lately, picking him up is surprisingly, he's surprisingly heavy. Anyway, for the last and most important size comparison here, we've got the Legacy Core Dinobots, kind of, with the Duck Tank. Alright, it is time to do the thing. Let's make Volcanicus. So, we are... Well, let's start with the legs. So, get you two out of here, bring back Snarl, and we'll start with Grimlock because he's Grimlock. So we're going to unplug the gun, rotate the fists back around. Actually, no, you want to rotate them out completely, like this. Then hinge this in, and the legs will actually tab together here and here. So plug those together, and then we'll just leave that for now. I'm going to raise up the backpack, and then before we bring it all the way around, we want to take this side, and you can tell which side it is because it's the same side where there's this little tab spot in the back of the neck. I want to rotate this panel up, and then this tab here will sit in that spot there. It doesn't really solidly tab into place, just kind of keeps it from rotating when it's in position. So with that done, you can rotate this down, and that will form the knee, basically. And then we can take the combiner peg and flip that up. Now, combine the legs, or connect the legs rather, swing everything up, and you want to, when you swing the legs up, you want to swing at the hips first and then the knees, because if you do the knees first, it's going to catch on his butt. So get past the butt first. Then when you bring these in, this bit will tab just above that screw there. And that, there we go. And that will form the back of the leg. Now with the hips all moved out of the way, these little tabs that tab that the arms made will tab into the front pelvis section. That will lock that together. And then you can take the tail, turn it upside down, and plug it into the robot shins. And that gives him an unnecessary heel. It's a place to store it, but it faces this way, not this way, so it just seems kind of silly. But hey, there's a leg. Grimlock is now a leg. For Snarl, not to take the sword out of his hand, and this backplate actually comes off. I like that you don't have to remove it to go between robot and dino mode though, but this on pegs. You want to rotate head around 180 degrees and bring in the tail. You don't have to rotate the head, but I like doing it because I don't want the robot mode face peeking out, because he would be peeking out just a little bit from there. So do that, straighten out the arms, swing them forward, and much like Grimlock, they will tab together at the shoulder here. So tab that together. And then these will tab into the pelvis section and kind of lock everything together. These don't tab in as well as with Grimlock, but they hold enough. Now you want to keep the dino head in. I'm going to peg the legs together, swing everything up, and before we close this off, actually want to get that combiner peg up and out of the way. Now we can swing this up the rest of the way, and these tabs here will plug into these tabs here, which is where the back plate was plugged into. And the back plate will now plug over the arms, where you've got these little bits there that'll peg over these pegs on the forearms. So you just want to plug that in, and there you have the other leg. And if you want to, you can take the sword and tab it in here. And it's typically what I do, but yeah, it's a look. But there we go. There we've got 2 legs for Volcanicus. Now let's do the arms. So we're going to take Scarr, remove the gun, and I don't think we need to rotate the head, so I'm just going to leave it like that. But do want to bring the arms forward on that hinge, kind of like we're going back to Dino mode. Tab the arms together. Come on, arms, tab together. There we go. So tab the arms together, straighten out the legs, and tab the legs together. Then swing up Dino mode head and plug that into here, though we might want to hold off for now so that we can get the combiner peg up and out of the way. And no, actually we don't need to rotate the waist. We can just leave that as is. So we'll just leave all that like that. And then the tail piece will now, this bit will tab over this section on the backs of the legs. And there we have an arm. I know, but again, it's a core class combiner. It's fine. But yeah, there is an arm. And then for Swoop, I'm going to take guns out of the hands, and then the guns will actually peg together. You can see there's a little peg there and some tabs here and here. That will all plug together to make the other fist. For the rest of it, you want to angle the head up and bring up the Pteranodon head. Can get the legs straightened out and tab together. Now for Swoop, you do want to do a 180-degree rotation at the waist, though you will need to get the wingtips out of the way. And unfortunately, for some reason, the way that the peg is situated, you can see it's not centered. So when you rotate it around, the waist kind of gets pushed that way, which is a little weird, but it is what it is. And can fold in the wings. Unfortunately, because of this being pushed out, the wingtips will kind of bump into what is now where the pelvis is now, but it's manageable. And now what I prefer to do is rotate the arms around 180 degrees and keep them bent at the elbow, and then tab the inner bicep into the torso. Like it's like Dino mode, except with these bits kind of rotated around. So I feel like that just cleans it up a little better, you know? And then can flip out the combiner peg, which is tucked in there. There we go. Flip that out. And lastly, the fist will peg into the, or tab into these little bits on the backs of the legs. And there we have another arm. And take Sludge and make him cheer for the fact that they're combining. Rotate the thighs 180 degrees. Flip up the pelvis piece, and then take the these bits, rotate these legs up, and then there's a little section here that'll tab in here. So I'm going to bring that up and tab that in there. And that will lock this in place. And yes, it locks the thigh-ish swivel, but like these are connected to the legs via pegs, so you still get thigh swivels, it's just not there. So leave that like that. Then we take slug, disconnect the gun, take this piece out of the gun, and then this piece of the gun will peg into Sludge's chest. That's why he's got that hole there. And that plugs in like that. And now we can go back to slug. So again, for slug, want to close the dino mouth all the way. Take the arms and rotate them around like going back into dino mode. But instead of going all the way back, they actually, these tab into the torso there. I'm going to do that. Just plug that in. Keep that nice and solid. These stay flared out if they're flared out, or if they're not flared out, you want to flare them out. And then, let's see. I'm not 100% sure what you're supposed to do with the dino legs. I've seen people do it so that they're kind of situated like this, so that they're up like this. I don't know how this is supposed to go. I prefer to keep it simple, so I'm just gonna have it like that for now. But like I've seen fan modes with people like flaring them out and stuff like that. I'm just gonna keep it simple. Now, start connecting things. We're gonna do sludge and slug first. So these will peg together. Sludge's head will go into this cavity on slug's chest, and then these three pegs will peg in here, here, and here. Bring that down and peg everything together. And that will start forming the torso. Now, Sludge's arms will come up and peg into these pegs on Slug's arms. And then additionally, these little pegs on these back pieces will peg into Sludge's fists. Or at least they're supposed to. They don't seem to want to. Might have things misaligned, or I might be wrong. I just don't know. I mean, it's not a super important step either. Anyway, just plug this in here and see if I can get this side. Yeah, they don't really want to plug in, but it's okay because they can't really wiggle around too much anyway. Oh wait, I think I just clicked that one in. So it can be done. Just must have not been lined up or something. Anyway, there is the Volcanicus torso section. I really like how that comes together. And then we can add the legs. So Grimlock just pegs into what will be the knee. And the little tail section here kind of slots in here. So that keeps it from blocking the motion too much, which is actually pretty clever. I like that. Snarl, same deal. Just peg it in. And there we go. Now, I'm going to take Scarr, and Scarr will peg into the back of Sludge's hand. And this is why I've got the combiner peg kind of at an angle, so that I can push from here rather than pushing on the figure. But push that in, and there we've got one arm in place. And then Swoop is the same deal. Bring that in and plug that in. And there we've got other arm. And lastly, you can take the piece that came out of Sludge's gun, which is, of course, the combiner head, and that will peg into this very, very conspicuous screw hole on top of Slug. And just plug that in. And there we have Legacy Volcanicus, Legacy Core Class Volcanicus in fully combined mode, and this is very dire. This is so a thing that sure does exist. I actually like this a lot, but I like it because it's kind of sad. Like, it's not terrible. It's not Crash Combiner quality. It's, you've got 6 core class figures that, in many respects, even the ones that I'm not super crazy about, still are pretty fun in their own right as standalone figures. And they all come together to make this. And the thing that gets me with Volcanicus is that torso combination showed so much promise. Like, the way it all came together was very clever. The proportions were really nice. It looked really promising. And then when you get to the rest of the limbs, or when you get to the limbs themselves, it's like, no. Pardon. It's okay, like, I don't expect Combiner Wars engineering on this. I'm okay with a lot of what's going on, even with the arms. It's okay. I'm not a fan of the bicep curler arms, but I get it. I would have preferred it if they had engineered this or designed it in a way that the fists could peg in a different way, so that you could maybe, like, rotate this way and use the arms more like this, with the fists oriented a little bit more properly. But this is what we got, and that's okay. Not my favorite thing, but it's okay. It's just the legs. The legs are what bug me the most about this, because they're very short and stumpy comparatively. Like, proportions-wise, the arms are a little thin, but, like, lengthwise, I think they work. It's just the legs are so short. And I've seen fan moding that people were playing around with initially that does make Volcanicus look better. Like, if you untab Grimlock's legs and swing them down to give him more of a, like, actual leg, same thing with Snarl. You swing that down and give him, like, proper quote-unquote legs, those proportions bring him back a little bit more. Those proportions look pretty cool. Like, that helps. The added length for the legs really does help. It makes the legs look more like legs and not stumps, I guess. But the problem with this is not stable at all. The only reason he's standing is because he's leaning against my backdrop. Like, if we try and stand him up like this, really? I hate you. If we try and stand him up like this, he isn't very stable. Like, you can kind of see if you move the legs out, he doesn't generally want to stand. Apparently, he wants to make me look like a jerk. But yeah, he tends to want to fall back when he's like this. He's just not stable. And that sucks. I really wish that they had designed this a little differently in terms of just the legs. Because these proportions, I think, make the combined mode look better. But nope, if you want him to actually be able to stand, you have to do the, the recommended stock combination, which it's, again, like, I don't hate it, even though I just said I hate you, but that's because I wasn't standing. I don't hate the stock combination, it's just not ideal. It's, I feel like it could have been a lot better. And, like, the shape of the legs, too, are so weird. I'm not bothered by the color difference between Grimlock and Snarl, because it's a combiner. Combiners aren't always uniform, and that's fine. I'm not bothered by non-uniformity when it comes to combiner colors. They're just so short and, like, weirdly chunky. Like, those are just some weirdly shaped legs. He just has these giant feet but they don't look like feet. They just look like a mess of parts. And that is a bit of a shame. But even with all the complaining I'm doing, I do actually like this a lot. This is a fun set. The combination does not look great, but it's fun because it's kind of silly. And honestly, I prefer this Volcanicus over the Power of the Primes Volcanicus. Like, yes, that one is more of a proper combiner in that it's got actual combiner proportions and everything like that, but a lot of the individual figures outside of Swoop were extremely compromised, and not in the, understandable way that you can kind of look past with these guys, because these guys, they're core class figures. So those compromises make more sense. The compromises that the deluxe figures had, especially considering there were other deluxes in Combiner Wars and Power of the Primes that handled the combination stuff way better and weren't anywhere near as compromised, it was just a big disappointment. This, you can have fun with the individual figures outside of the combination. The actual combination is interesting and fun to do. The transformations for all of them are at least entertaining, if not enjoyable. So yeah, like, this may be uglier in a lot of ways than the Power of the Primes version, but if nothing else, I think we can all agree the torso looks better. Having, okay, this design for Volcanicus is fun, because, I get it, everyone wants to make Grimlock the torso because he Grimlock, but this is cool. I like having Slug's Triceratops head as, the sort of chest crest. There's just something fun about that. And again, that torso combination is actually really cool, and it looks really good. It's just let down by the limbs. The leg transformations are kind of the weakest part of all this. But even so, this does work for what it is. It could absolutely be better, and I am keeping my fingers crossed in the hopes that we get upgrade kits at some point in the future. I've seen a couple that add, feet and do, different things with the arms, but I don't want to order somebody's stolen 3D printed design off of, TF Safari or something like that. So I'm going to wait until I see something that's either, an actual artist is selling that I really like, or maybe something from Non-F, or something from DNA. But the point is, I'm holding out hope that we get some upgrade kits that enhance this combined mode a little bit. But even if we never get them, or even if I never buy them, this is fun in its own way, in its own right. But, as I've said, the torso is pulling a lot of the weight here. I do, though, think it's cool how that whole thing comes together, and I like, too, this little panel that flips up, because that just kind of shifts the color a bit, and now it makes all of this black read like a waist, even though it's up the underside of a pelvis flap and and thighs. But it does a good job of masking all that. I just wish that some of that was, directed towards the leg design. Now, we need to kind of keep going because I realize I'm well over an hour into recording. But the head is it's a Volcanicus head, very Volcanicus. I love the kind of samurai crest shape. But I always liked Volcanicus's head design, and this is pretty much that. It's the same design, from what I can remember at least, as the Power of the Primes version, but smaller. It's got kind of a Grimlock flair to it with the shape of the faceplate and the eyes, but then you've got that big gold head crest, which looks cool. I love how the red eyes stand out on the black. Though because of the shape of everything going on here, if you turn the head too far, you can knock the, as you can see, you can knock these bits out of place. But still, it's cool. And articulation-wise, this guy's actually pretty solid. As you saw, the head can rotate because it's pegged in. Then you've got rotation at the shoulders, which can't go 360, but you can go 180 from forward to back, so that's pretty good. You've got outward motion, which is hampered by the stuff going on here, but as you see, you can kind of At least with Scarr, you can rotate things out of the way. With Swoop, you don't have to rotate things out of the way. So the arms can go out. You get what counts as a bicep swivel, though with Scarr, you kind of have to rotate things out of the way to get a full swivel out of it. But you can do a swivel. You've got technically a double jointed elbow. Technically. But it's the bicep curler thing, which I'm not a huge fan of. And on Swoop, it's the same deal. You can do the rotation, you can do the technical double jointed elbow. It's fine. Considering the size and all that, it's fine. But what is kind of cool is Sludge's waist swivel works for Volcanicus, so you can still get that waist swivel. That's pretty neat. And then the hips can go forward and back. You can go out to, let's see how far out these legs can go. Okay, that's as far out as they can go. They cannot go out any further than that. That kind of stinks. It's okay, if you go backwards, it's because of this. This bit here is banging into the body, and that's keeping it from going out too far, but still, you can go out. Due to the way that the legs peg in, you get thigh rotation, and then you can bend at that combiner joint to bend the knee. And I do think this is really cool. I like how they designed this with Grimlock, how he's got this kind of divot in the foot that allows that tail from Sludge to go down into that channel so you can actually get a 90-degree bend. The problem is you can't rotate the thigh when the knee is bent like that because that's, blocking everything. But if you rotate the thigh first, as you can see, this likes to move around too, but if you rotate the thigh first so that it doesn't go into the channel, then you can get more of a proper, you still get the 90-degree bend and everything. So yeah, the engineering on it's not pretty, but the actual engineering of the combiner is really actually pretty clever. And Snarl, it's kind of the same deal, except he doesn't have to deal with the channel. So you can do the knee bend, you can do the thigh swivel, though the thigh swivel is a little bit impeded by the tail, but still, you can work around it. So yeah, Volcanicus is surprisingly bendy for being a simplistic core class combiner that, for whatever reason, is suddenly not wanting to stand. I don't know what I did. I think maybe I had Snarl bent slightly. Okay. So yeah, I like this. I just am a little disappointed by it too. I feel like they could have done just a little better. Oh, also, if you really want, you can unplug Snarl's sword and give it to Volcanicus, and now he's got this really dinky knife that just looks sad. So I don't do that. But if you do want to store this somewhere without plugging it into Snarl so that it doesn't look like he has this weird sword toenail, there are some other places you can peg it in, like any 5 or 3mm ports that you see. Not that. You can plug it in. You could plug it into Scarr's hand, but a thing that I found that actually works is the little spot right here where the leg clips on for Scarr is just the right size for this to peg in. And it's not anywhere near as tight as it is on Snarl, but it's definitely tight enough that's not just going to fall out. So if you don't want to have the sword stored there, but you don't want to lose the sword, you can do that. And it's not, considering everything else going on with this thing, it's not that obvious that it's there. So that is an option. I'll just plug this back in and move on to size comparisons because this video is running really long. But there we go. There is Volcanicus being weird about standing. Stop being weird about standing. Stop it. Okay. Now, size-wise, this is kind of funny because, it's a combiner, but it's a combiner made up of core class figures, so he's not exactly a large boy. He's a beefy boy, but not tall. And I think that's fine. I actually kind of prefer it because that means I don't have to worry about finding room for him on the shelf that much. He's basically the height of like a Voyager figure. So, yeah. Granted, he's like he's the height of one Voyager figure, but the width of two. But still, he's not ridiculously gigantic, which I do appreciate. That and the fact that I just don't really care for it that much at this point is why I prefer this over the Power of the Primes version. But anyway, let's wrap this up with the most important size comparison of them all. Here is Legacy Volcanicus with all the core class Dinobots with the Duck Tank. And that is it for this guy. And as I've already said, it's definitely not a super amazing, super solid, super clean combiner, but it's fun. I appreciate it, and I really do appreciate just how experimental they got with this on like an engineering and design level. That is cool. I hope we get stuff like this again in the future. I know that there's talk of like this getting remolded and repainted, and that's cool too, but like I hope we get to see more experimentation along these lines that's not just like taking all of this and reworking it. I'm hoping that they decide to play around with more core class combiners in the future that aren't based off of this mold, like either completely new and unique core class combiners, or core class versions of familiar combiners, but done in a new, unique way because of the constraints of the size class. Like, core class Superion, core class Menace. Well, I mean, I guess we won't get a core class Menasor, or if we did, it'd be a while. But I want to see more of this. This is fun. I like it, and it definitely helps that all the individual bots are totally enjoyable on their own. Even the ones that aren't the best, like Sludge and Slug, are probably the weakest. Sludge, Slug, and Grimlock are like the weakest of the six, but even they have their upsides as individual figures. With all that said, I've gone on way too long, so let me know what you all think of the core class Dinobot sets from Legacy and Volcanicus in general. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and I forgot to do the support the channel thing, so I'll do that now. So yeah, if you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done on the channel, you can always support me via Ko-fi, which is there's a link in the description, or Patreon. I have a single $1 tier. That $1 a month gets you early access to new videos. You can watch new videos a few days before everybody else. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel without spending any money, you can always do the common like comment, subscribe, share, that kind of thing. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and next time, I think I know what I'm going to look at next, but we'll see.